Hello and welcome to Streamlined Certificate Management and Automation, delivering at scale, uptime, and availability. Today's webinar is sponsored by DigiCert and produced by Actual Tech Media. My name is Scott Becker. I'm from Actual Tech, and I am delighted to be your moderator for this special event. Now, before we get to today's great session, we have a few housekeeping items that will help you get the most out of it. First off, we want this to be an informative event for you, so we encourage any questions in the questions box in your webinar control panel. So not only will we have team members responding to questions during the live event, we'll also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the presentation where we'll discuss in greater detail some of the top questions that you asked. The Q&A panel is also the place to let us know about any technical issues you might be experiencing. A browser refresh will fix most audio, video, or slide advancement issues, but if that doesn't work, just let us know there in the Q&A and we'll provide further technical assistance. Now, second, in the handout section of your webinar control panel, you'll find that we're offering several resources. I'd especially like to call your attention to a link to learn more about DigiCert. So I encourage you to access that and the other resources in there now and share them with your friends and colleagues. Now, third, at the end of this webinar event, we will be awarding a $250 Amazon gift card to one lucky registrant. Of course, you must be in attendance during the live event to qualify for the prize. Official terms and conditions of today's prize drawing can be found in the handout section. Just scroll to the bottom and you'll find the link with the details there. And with all that housekeeping out of the way, let's get to today's fantastic content. So it's my pleasure to introduce you to our presenters. We have David Croston, who's Strategic Account Director at DigiCert, and we have Frank Agurto Mikado, who's a Sales Engineer at DigiCert. So I'm going to turn things over to David to get us started.
We are so excited for this webinar. We have had so much interest, and you can't look around the room, but the seats are filled, and we're really excited to present this to you today. We're going to go through a little bit of the industry trend. Then we're going to talk a little bit about Trust Lifecycle Manager, which is our certificate management platform. First, we'll talk a little bit about DigiCert One, which is the overarching platform. And then Frank is going to take us through a demo of automation, just to give you a taste. So Frank, thanks for joining. And Frank and I are literally 20 minutes. I'm a Boston boy, but I'm out in California for the week, and Frank is literally 15 minutes south of me, but it feels like you're even closer today.
Thanks, Dave.
All right, so let's jump in. First of all, I want to thank you for the hour that you have invested in your future, and we're really thrilled. Your hour is so important to you and to us. So we hope that this will be a lively presentation, and then we'll open up to questions and answers for the last 10 minutes. Many times we in sales use fear as a stick to try to convince you of the importance of what we're trying to sell. And often that fear, when you try to present that same scenario to your senior management, often goes on. It's a false equivalency. And so I want to try to get us all to start thinking of PKI management as a business driver. And we're going to go through a number of things today about the convergence of public key infrastructure and the importance of unification of public key infrastructure as we head down a pathway of both legacy, private cloud, and public cloud. And we'll get into that in more detail. But I'd like to speak relative to driving true return on investment, the speed and agility you can provide to your DevOps operations, to your platform teams, the efficiency of automation. There's all sorts of complexity to digital certificates today. And the reality is there's a lot of fear out there for the 90-day certificate. But in truth, we probably should be pretty much at 90-day certificates today. We should be capable of actually not only having visibility of our certificates in the platform, we should know what their crypto strength is. We should be prepared for how we're going to roll those in a post-quantum environment. We should be aware of our private certificates. And we're going to talk a lot about the convergence of public and private PKI today. Ultimately, though, it's about now giving you the tools to actually talk to your senior managers about a return on investment, that we want to actually focus in on workflow, and we want to focus in on visibility, want to focus in on automation. And together, we're going to be able to actually drive a absolute return and the ability for you to run your businesses. Now, I had built this slide up, and it doesn't work well on this platform, but I was going to ask our marketing team to really kind of maybe see if we could actually hire this guy, John W., who's 90, used to be the Boston Pops conductor. And then I was going to have this guy, Carl S., maybe introduce this slide and have this interstellar kind of music behind us, because I think we're living right now in a PKI 3.0 moment. What do I mean by that? I've been in PKI since in 1998. I put PKI in a managed VPN environment. And the reality is that the convergence of public and private, the DevOps operations using Let's Encrypt, the platform teams needing private TLS certificates, all of this is actually converging at this one point in time. And we have to feel for you, because we have to help you kind of map your future and how you're going to work with all these business units. And I like to talk about design patterns. Design patterns is all about working with individual business units and making sure we can have one, visibility to where their certificates are, to address how we automate those certificates, whether they be 1-day certificates, 1-week certificates, 1-month certificates, or 13-month certificates. And the reality is that this can all be done in a converged manner today. This PKI 3.0 moment is about legacy networks, whether it's your F5, your NetScalers, what have you, in your traditional infrastructure. It is your private cloud environments, maybe running on OpenShift, Tanzu. And the reality is that everyone is using a certificate. And then it's within the public cloud environment. On the top line, though, we kind of look at what we have: publicly rooted certificates, traditional public TLS certificates, which many of you know from DigiCert, but we're not the commodity provider that we were. We are now a solution provider. We are providing DigiCert One as a platform for not only certificate management, but supply chain security, inclusive of malware detection, device trust, content trust. And we're actually merging this entire platform across this body so that we can actually really start helping you converge these networks, helping you have common policy and control. Let me go back for a sec, because I thought I was going to build here a little bit. But there's also other types of certificates. You have Microsoft CAs in your environment, and you have Let's Encrypt in your DevOps operations. You have your cloud environments of ACM, Amazon Certificate Manager, and Azure Vault. We actually don't want you to change the way you do your business. DigiCert One and Trust Lifecycle Manager actually understands and wants to manage those certificates with one common policy, one common governance, and be able for you to have that visibility of the certificates you use every single day. So again, we're not trying to present just our public TLS certificates. We're presenting Trust Lifecycle Manager as a unified platform for policy and governance. Oh, have to go the right direction. Okay, one of the drivers here, and I talked about convergence of public and private PKI. One of the true drivers is basically private cloud or public cloud. And it's the idea of cloud native identity. It's the idea of what is mutual TLS authentication and encryption between workloads in the cloud. And we start actually this build of today it could be service mesh, so that you have more unification in the way you're presenting your Kubernetes environments. But in the future, there's a CNCF graduate project called SPIFFE Inspire. And I'd be curious later in question and answer if anyone is looking at that. So the Spire project is all about the use of what's called a SPID, a SPIFFE ID, on the workload. And more clouds are now accepting the Spire protocol. And the reality is that this is really exciting. It's really exciting for DigiCert, and it's really exciting for you as the practitioner. Because as you look at SPIFFE Inspire, you're going to actually find that they're going to start addressing secrets management in a more unified manner. And so slowly we start saying, all right, this is really interesting because we're converging basically all policy, all governance into a common certificate management system. And we are uniquely positioned to present you a platform. Why? Because for years we have been the world's leading CA. DigiCert, as many of you know, we are VeriSign and Thought and GeoTrust and the semantics PKI business. And, so we have years of experience of being a certificate authority. We also have years of experience of actually managing some of the world's biggest private certificate authorities. So we actually manage both their public and private routes, and we develop what are called intermediate certificate authorities in both dev and in prod for their use. Now let's go back for a second. We talk about converged networks and the idea of public TLS for ingress and egress. We talk about private TLS for potentially between workload environments in the mesh and potentially Inspire, where X509 certificates actually define the SPID. The reality is now private PKI in the ability to have one common platform for certificate management is really critical. The idea of having a standalone third-party certificate management system today really does not make a lot of sense. That we can provide a converged platform and we can provide the bundle of services and do so while we're considering true value, true return on investment to you, the enterprise. I want to leave this slide in a second, but I want to address the dynamic nature of intermediate certificate authorities. Intermediate certificate authorities are really kind of the large rock that we can build upon. It's the foundation for you, for your projects, for your business units, and the idea that we now can create dynamic ICAs for individual projects, use cases, business units, that we can have them in dev and in prod, that we can build them, we can bring them down, that we can actually now kind of create this architecture for public and private PKI. All of this is managed in DigiCert One. Within DigiCert One, we have what we call our CA manager. And I didn't mention at the beginning, but it is one of the strongest elements of DigiCert One, because it's actually managing not only your public route, but it's managing all your private routes and your private ICAs. It's really important that your future and the way you manage your your certificates in the future, that you align yourself with a CA. There are many third-party CMS providers that have and claim private CA services, but you want to actually push through that because some of them aren't their own and they're white labeling those services. So it's very important for you to ask questions and actually start looking at how your private PKI aligns to your certificate management platform. Now, overarching this, these were all build slides, and the platform doesn't really like that. So overarching this is this idea of we have, as I showed before, the legacy networks, the private clouds, the public clouds, and this policy and governance that we need between all, basically our environment. But weighing on this is post-quantum computing. Now, this is not at all something we should be fearful of. Matter of fact, it may be the event that actually brings you better awareness of how we can consolidate certificate management across public and private. It may be better awareness of how, or the importance of certificate and the cipher strength of certificates. But as we go into quantum safe algorithms, it's really important that it's not going to be like the past. We've had RSA and ECC at different cipher strengths. The reality is that in the future, while NIST has approved 3 initially and probably 4 by June, but the reality is we will have many lattice-based and many hash-based algorithms. And you're probably going to have certificate chains, especially in your private PKI, that will be different and will use different algorithms for different use cases because of the, if you will, quote unquote, the expense on the client side. So the reality is that we're about to go into a whole different realm, not to be fearful of it, but to be prepared for it. And once again, it's really important that you managing this from our perspective as a CA, we're sitting with NIST, we're sitting with all the governance bodies. And we actually are really excited about what we can do with you as our partner. So now, this is just a quick slide. I don't want this to be PQC aware, but when we start talking about post-quantum, people get, well, what do I do? The first plan is to have visibility, do discovery on your network, make sure you can find your certificates, and then define a workflow that makes sense for each business unit. Start looking at automation, because automation is critical. When you want to be crypto agile, you want to make sure that not only can you automate a replacement of an RSA to, let's say, a dilithium, the reality is that at the end of the day, you want to be able to be capable of doing that at any time. And that's a different webinar, and we'll be happy to invite you to one. So I start talking about, I had this as a build slide where I had basically my compass, north-south traffic being kind of public TLS, ingress, egress, east-west traffic in the cloud being, in essence, something that we handle through private TLS principally. And so you need a compass. And we start talking about, the idea of a sextant to actually drive, awareness. And your sextant today is DigiCert's Trust Lifecycle Manager. So Trust Lifecycle Manager is, as I've mentioned, as I set up basically the product slides, this is all about managing CA agnostic. It's about managing your public certificates, about managing your Let's Encrypt, about managing your Microsoft CA. And It's managing your cloud environments in AWS and Azure, and in the future, the other cloud environments. What's really important is that this is now basically a single tool, single platform, a single platform that can go over into supply chain security as well. At the DigiCert One level, you have basically the ability to actually have multi-factor authentication, role-based control, so you can drive what and who and what business unit defines within Trust Lifecycle Manager templating and defining templates to specific use cases. So we're streamlining your entire operation, similar to what you're probably doing potentially today with other CMSs. But again, it's the converged network. We're converging public, private, Let's Encrypt, Microsoft CA, in all your cloud environments. We're actually enabling automation of your mesh environments and into the future, your Spire environments. So it's really exciting. But what it's initially doing is giving you visibility. It's giving you the discovery. It's giving you visibility of those certificates. It's actually analyzing what kind of cipher strength those certificates have, and it's preparing you to help manage. And then it's automating. Many of this I've talked to, but when we come right down to probably the reason you're here, it's automation. And what is so critical in my mind is that we start moving away from scripts that have to be managed, from blind API calls that are being fulfilled. And we start slowly migrating to ACME, SCEP, EST. We start looking at the industry protocols that are standards, and all of which we support. And slowly start building what we believe is a best practices automation platform that really I like to call this a center of excellence with our partners. And the reality is you are our partner. And so much of this is learning together of saying, all right, how do we take your environment and how do we automate that environment? And using ServiceNow tools, using ACME services, using Cert Manager, which from the CNCF, to actually manage these certificates in this modern environment. This kind of goes back over the private PKI, but the idea of having fast CAs, the idea of having intermediate CAs, the idea of being, repeatable and having, not only customizable profiles, but then, having them as that basically template for that business unit so it's seamless. And I think this is what it's all about. We need to actually create greater efficiency and then greater automation in your platform. So, and then most importantly, it's the integration so that it is seamless in your environment. And I hop to, and I want to get to this last one, but so integrations are critically important, whether they be the clients we provide so that we have seamless integration to desktop environments, through Intune or Jamf, or whether it is, clients or what we call sensors that go within the network to help us, basically have visibility and automation within your environments. Whether it's the protocols, SCEP, EST, ACME, and the ACME service is highly dynamic. And so the platform itself, we believe, is on par, if not better, than any other CMS. But when you actually start looking at the ability to actually control root, control intermediate CA, and have common policy and governance, it's really a driver for your future certificate authority business. So proof's in the pudding. right? I mean, at the end of the day, it is, and I'm sorry, this is a little bit tiny in print, but it is the ability to actually work with Microsoft, to work with Let's Encrypt, to have end-to-end certificate provisioning through our clients and our sensors. And we're going to actually show that, and Frank's going to show that on an F5 in a little bit. And like anything, it is our experience as a certificate authority, our experience in managing, our public process. And I want to take a second to highlight DigiCert's kind of value to the whole ecosystem. That while we support Let's Encrypt and direct validation, there's a lot of risks. And if you're calling from a financial institution or someone who really has to have high regard to their customer-facing portal, the reality is you want organizational validation, you want extended validation certificates. DigiCert spends millions of dollars in having a validation group that actually goes and validates every single domain, every single organization, and individuals within those organizations. And it is that testament to the integrity of our process and our standards that I think people embrace and respect DigiCert for. And so I want to highlight and thank those on the call that are our customers, but also strengthen the idea that organizational validation certificates, extended validation certificates do matter, and your customers do see that. And I think it's going to matter more as we get into AI and potential threats there, that DV certificates may just not be sufficient to do customer facing, what I call north-south activity. And that still requires organizational validation and extended validation. And you have basically our commitment that validation process will never be shortcutted. And while it's a pain for all of you, and it's a pain for us as well, we will never shortcut that process, and we'll make sure of the integrity of your domains and your organization if you're with DigiCert. So we're going to actually pass over to Frank, a demonstration, but I want to kind of end and just reiterate, this is different. I've been in certificate management for some time. I have worked for what some would say would be our largest competitor. And this is a time when we really need to look at certificate management and its safety. There are platforms out there that do key escrow, and they do key escrow in software. And, quite frankly, that's really something that has to be looked at carefully if you're doing it. Many that we know of that are doing key escrow are actually deploying HSMs to better protect their private key matter and hardware. So the reality is that outreach to us, we are now solution focused at DigiCert. We're excited to work with you. We are looking to broaden our partnership with you, and we're looking to actually create these centers of excellence with you to actually kind of bridge us into what is going to be a very exciting decade for us. Imagine, and then Frank, I'll pass over. Imagine that we will have quantum safe algorithms, maybe 8 this time next year, maybe 24 in 3 years, in the reality of different chains, outreach to an expert, outreach to a partner, and we would embrace your business at DigiCert. So Frank, let's give them a good demonstration of F5.
Thanks, David. I'm going to try. That was a lot of information you passed. Thank you. And sorry I didn't chime in sooner. I've been answering a lot of the Q&A. You guys are giving me some really good questions, making me think. So in case you didn't see it on the camera, I'm like really sitting there trying to think about this. Again, real quick before I jump in the demonstration to the questions that I did answer. Some of these, I would highly recommend we engage your account manager. I can be on those calls, or any of the SEs that we provide globally can be on these calls. And again, we kind of operate in a 24/7 by 365 because we cover the 3 coasts and we have a global team as well, very efficient sales engineers, much smarter than I am, that can jump on the phone as well. Demonstrations, discuss concerns, etc. All right, so what we're going to do today, and I'm just setting my timer because Frank likes to talk. So we're going to go ahead and talk about automation. I'm going to start sharing. Bear with me here. All right. Give me 1 second. Okay. The good thing is with automation and the way that the Trust Lifecycle Manager or the DigiCert One platform where these managers live, the way they operate is we can do a lot of our management and command and control right from the web interface. Like in this case, what we're going to do today with the F5. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about automation. Before we go in there, I'm going to give a quick rundown because you'll find that automation is extremely efficient, extremely fast in the way that we do it at DigiCert. And for the sake of the goblins that work in demos, do not prove me wrong today. So again, quickly, excuse me, the dashboard is where you can always land. Like I said earlier, just quickly, a lot of folks in DigiCert call these the pizza box, but I like to call this the grid, whatever you would like to call it. But essentially, this gives you access to the platform, to the different managers. To Dave's point earlier with the CA manager, this is what directly talks to our HSM-based services, whether you're dealing with roots, intermediates, and code signing, you're getting access to those key pairs. A lot of this is facilitated through the CA management service on the back end. But essentially today we're working through Trust Lifecycle Manager. My demonstration account, I have hybrid-based rights. From an access management perspective, you only really have 2 users. You have administrators and service users, but administrators can be hybrid or watered down to only do very specific things, which is nice. And it's easy for the admin who comes in or who may not be directly overseeing these services can quickly adjust rights on the fly, and like we've always done with our best in breed management. Kind of an older phrase, but still very useful. Again, from the dashboard perspective, we can see everything going on. If I'm doing discovery, if I'm running services like we're going to use today, what we call connectors, I'm going to start getting certificates built into my inventory. We are not taking things from these services. Rather, what we're doing is when we connect to them, we're asking, hey, oh, by the way, what do you have going on in your CMDB? And then we start getting those that rich certificate information to help you make better decisions on management. Not necessarily stop using it, but again, like I always go back to, that alignment to those services to unify the management process or the management experience. Okay, so for today, like I said, we're going to be working with the F5 model or the F5 deployment and automation model. On the inventory, essentially what happens is we have as you start to expand across your network, you start getting more certificate information, you start having the need, or you start even being tasked to do more management. You can start collecting this information as you're either doing network discoveries, deploying connectors, what have you. In this case today, to simplify it, I've created my own F5. All the inventory off our F5. I only really have one socket I can play with, so I just narrowed my search down to my inventory just to my stuff. So call me selfish, but again, here's my certificate. It's ready to go. What I'm going to do is start the process and then explain how we're getting there. But I would like you to see the entire process. So I think we're going to change gears a little bit, and I'm going to take us right into it. And I'm going to explain it and then take us through the integration, because you're going to find that the deployment is very fast. Now, again, what I did from an integration perspective when I get ready to start this is I deployed a connector, and within that integration, I deployed a sensor. Okay. And I'm going to go right back here. So sorry to jump around the baseball field a little bit. But again, I think it's better we just see the process right off the bat. So once I have my active socket that I'm going to use, and again, you'll hear this from our product manager as well on the TLM side, the scan is not always in the network. The connector will do a lot of this excess heavy lifting for you and makes it very simplified, very fast. And again, you can move on to the next thing. We'd love to do nothing more but than highlight DigiCert functionality all day long. But the reality is You've got other things to do. And PKI sometimes is the least amount of your problems until something breaks. Then all of a sudden, people who used to do these things aren't there anymore. So we take a very hard emphasis on how we do the management. And again, to sum it all up, that best in breed management functionality that we try to provide for customers to move forward with their day and get through these processes very quickly. Again, you could say it was collaboration with everything else you're doing throughout your day. And it saves you the amount of coffee you have to consume. All right, so now what I did was I went into my inventory, I saw my active socket, and I said, okay, now I want to request a certificate for it. So first thing we got to do is we got to decide what profile we work from. So the way profiles operate is very straightforward or very rudimentary. It's one to many. One profile can satisfy many provisions of certificates across your eco. So if I have one set of systems that need this type of certificate, but then for these projects, I have another, set of certificates that I need, or shorter lives, or whatever it is, maybe different policies that I can institute. Rather than put you on a global policy, we allow you to dictate the policy per profile. So now it's very easy to institute it as you're moving forward. But again, I always like to say top down, left to right, and very rudimentary programming language or processes is I can go top down in the sense of building my profile, seeing how the process is what I'm getting with that certificate when I institute it, whether it's to one or many systems. And then again, anything else I want to add there. And then left to right is as I commence forward to finish that project or to get to the end point, which is the completion of that certificate deployment. Okay. As you can see here, I'm using public trust. So what I've done is once again, through my integrations, I've connected to my Search Central account to get access to those public CAs. And again, because that's where those CAs live, they live on the Search Central platform. We're not going to simply rip those things out and reposition them for DC1. Rather, what we can do is make DC1 the center of the cell. And as the nucleus, it can reach out to those different layers of things that it needs. Very easy, very fluid, and very fast in response. So there's my additional order fields. They're optional. They're not required, so I don't have to walk through them. I have options to start now. I can schedule it down the road if I want to. I can pick my time zone, whatever I need. And then, of course, I can auto-renew. I tell customers, be careful with auto-renewal. Pay respect to the web application, because if you, on an appliance, it's probably pretty easy. We can rebind it very quickly. We can take advantage of the existing original key pair that was out there and re-sign that existing CSR. You will get a new serial number because it is a re-signing of a certificate, so to speak. But when you auto-renew, you start scheduling when you want to see this to happen. And I don't want to say fire and forget, it's a little overused, but it is basically that model. I can set it and walk away, and it works in this kind of wash, rinse, repeats mechanism. That as long as I'm, obviously I'm paying attention to it as the administrator, because I'm going to get notified of something, how it starts, finishes, and if it fails or whatever it is, I can go out there and quickly start troubleshooting it and still stay in somewhat of a proactive mode of getting that up and running again. For this case, I'm going to leave it off auto renew and go with the defaults. Tags are a courtesy. If I want to, as you saw earlier in my view, I had that data tagged and I was keeping everything together for me, but some customers tag, some don't. But tags, again, are very helpful, especially as you start to expand and align to other services through the connectors or through network discovery or whatever it is. It starts to be very beneficial to start tagging and kind of separating those certificates a little bit, because again, your inventories are going to grow. And I've seen with every customer that's used TLM, those inventories can grow sometimes very quickly. And it helps to kind of sort that data, especially when you're starting to create custom reports right from that inventory. If we have time, we'll talk about that today. At the very end, I know what I'm getting into. I agree, and I'll submit and start the process. Now, while this is going, in case you haven't heard enough of me, I'm going to talk a little bit more here. What happens is we're using the SaaS model and how on our connectivity or communication model to DigiCert. And so what happens is that sensor is everything's outbound. There's not DigiCert coming into your eco. What happens rather is you deploy software applications like sensors, agents, whatever you're doing at this point. The connectors operate from TLM. So think of a sensor as kind of a multi-tool that doesn't have any attachments. The connector is that attachment. It's the spoon, it's the blade, it's the file, it's the saw. And for each of these services you connect to, you're inserting that attachment. But the connector itself does not have to reside into the eco. Rather, it can work from a centralized point of TLM. And as that sensor is doing things and it starts to heartbeat back in, because the sensor will only use 2 ports to communicate, 80 and 443. And then what happens is the sensor says, oh yeah, I've got these things for you, for Mr. Sensor. And then the sensor comes back in a secure communication and it grabs that action and it goes forward. Maybe it's a new connector. Maybe it's like what you just saw here that finished a heck of a lot faster than me finishing my conversation, is it finished the automation, right? And it did everything, if you can see there, from the generation of the CSR, it does the certificate issuance, which it puts it back on us there. So that it's replying and giving us the CSR, we're signing it, putting it ready for the sensor. The sensor knows, instead of waiting for the heartbeat, the sensor knows it's in the middle of a automation task. So it's checking very quickly to see if that thing is ready. And then when it is, it deploys it, tests it, and testing means sure it's bound. We can run through the chain to check the route and everything is working okay. Okay, so there is your automation model. Now, as that's completed, you can start seeing details about what took place. Think of it almost like a TLS session. The last part of the session that encrypts, it's basically a recap of everything you did. And if you can decrypt it, then that shows you're cooking with gas, you're doing communication. Very similar to what you're seeing here in automation. If everything worked out okay, this is everything that I did once again. And on the screen, as you can see, there's my org details, there's the organizational contact, everything through the common name and nomenclature of that certificate, and the serial numbers will be unique every time, whether I reissue or do new issuances. So hopefully that's making sense. What we're going to do now is we're going to go verify it. So now I go to my F5, and this is just very rudimentary, quick look. There's probably 5 different ways that some administrators who are more fluent with the F5 than I am will look. But real quickly, I can run into here. And as you can see, everybody's doing certs on this F5. And we can see all this stuff Frank's been doing. He's been a busy guy. And I can come down here and I can see very quickly on today's date, March 27th, that I have my certificates that I've been playing with and that are now available. And again, we can bring that certificate data up. We can view them. It was a 1-year cert, as we saw, things like that. Very rudimentary information, but very quick to identify outside of jumping back and forth to your website to make sure that it's indexed properly, etc. But again, quickly you can verify that data. Okay. So we have a few minutes here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take us through quickly, talk about a couple things that I wanted to show. Again, kind of reemphasize the way we got there, right? Sensors, of course, we're going to talk about kind of how to make the sausage. And one of those ingredients is really the network sensor. We offer 3 types. We offer Docker, Windows, and Linux. Nothing outside of more than accessibility. And if I had to put my marketing cap on, market share, the most prevalent network operating systems and management-based applications that we see in enterprise networks today. And then from the sake of connectors, I remember I said earlier that I have hybrid management, so I cannot add connectors to this account, but we have a very fluid model of connectors that we can provide for customers based on the level of work that needs to be done. The data I'm showing you, the reason I show this page is because this is public information. To give our UIX team some props, these are extremely well-written documents, very easy to read. I'm a very lazy reader. I never impose heavy reading on anybody or homework if I can't do it myself. But the way this operates is top down, left to right. Once again, it's reference-based reading. So if you're interested, you can go further to the installation. Otherwise, you get quick information about how connectors operate, the statuses of checking those connectors, even your certificate authorities that could be residing there under each of those managers. And it breaks down actually by manager and by platform. So hopefully that helps you. I'm going to end it there. If there are questions, absolutely put them into the Q&A. And anything that I don't answer today, Taylor and team are going to give me these questions and I'm going to answer with you directly. But on a lot of these, I'm going to highly recommend that we work with our account management team as well. So Taylor, I'm going to hand it back to you, ma'am.
Awesome. Well, thank you both, David and Frank. That was very insightful and informative. We have about 17 minutes left for a Q&A, so let's go ahead and get started with that. The first question that we have is, you mentioned key escrow with some concern. My CMS escrows are keys. Why is this a concern?
So I mentioned when we escrow keys and we have private keys in a software-based environment, this is really the crown jewels. And we are highly recommending most of our customers move that into hardware security modules. The reality is that there has been one of our competitors that has been doing this for many years. And the reality is that we need to actually start really worrying about our private key matter. And so this was addressed, and there's a lot of questions about the code signing changes that were done last summer. And Microsoft was one of the drivers there. They basically said that to have private keys be portable is really insane. And so they, with the CAB forum, the CA browser forum, so all the public CAs and then all the leading browsers that sit on this forum basically ruled that all private keys had to be on FIPS 140-2 level 3 devices. That has changed things, and we stood up Keylocker, and we stood up what we call Software Trust Manager. These are services to address how to manage your private code signing certificate. But it's not much different than your server certificate. It's not much different than the automation you're driving for, let's say, your cert manager instance on an Istio mesh. The reality is we should be highly protective of all that private key matter. And so we are open to sharing how we do our model. I think this is something that we can't just rely on the past decade and what has worked well. We need to really be cognizant of where a potential attack vector is. And so key escrow is a major attack vector that actually opens up all the jewels of the kingdom to an attacker. So I hope that answers that question.
Awesome. Okay, the next one is, you spoke of importance of being the CA. I am using a third-party certificate management system. Why, again, do you recommend the importance of a CA provider?
Well, I think it's all about policy and governance. About, we're going to go out and we're going to get into kind of this post-quantum world that we're going to have all sorts of new algorithms. We're going to need crypto agility. We're going to have private ICAs, intermediate certificates authorities that are going to handle a lot of the load for a lot less price. We're going to, so this whole idea of having either your own standalone Microsoft CA or having any third-party CA or having a independent certificate management system, they all seem fairly redundant today, because policy and governance, the ability to have automation and template, these design templates that we can actually build, the automation to your certificate management, to business units, to projects. I just think that business need, that efficiency, that speed and agility really outweighs, the idea of actually standing multiple providers. I like to make the analogy with customers at times that we would never in personal identity do what we do in machine identity. And so you don't have multiple vendors that you have redundant, let's say PAM systems running within a company. And I think today is the day that you don't want to, you want to start considering how you consolidate your vendors and have a single certificate management system to handle what is, 100 times, potentially 1,000 times more. When we look at, let's say, a true Kubernetes instance, we could have hundreds of thousands and 100 times that workloads. And now we're dealing with X509's identities and SVIDs. Now is the time to actually start focusing on your certificate management and policy and governance and figuring out, all right, what does that look like in 3 years?
Awesome. Okay, the next question is this platform for just convergence, or can we use it to replace our on-prem PKI environment?
Frank, you want to take that? They're
I'm
sick of me
answering Keith's question, but
oh, all right.
Can you please repeat the question? I'm sorry. Can you please repeat it, and I'll jump right in.
Yeah,
no.
Okay.
So I'll do it. I
Okay.
just wanted to share. But yes, we can't wait to start managing your Microsoft CA. We have a connector. We'll import those certificates. You can manage your Microsoft CA certificates through us. You have automations to your ADCS environment. You have the ability to use Intune and Jamf, and we have a incredible agent that can go on desktops to make it is to actually drive value in the convergence that we want to do your business better. And so we don't want to be a friction point. We want to actually be basically the confluence to this idea that we're the laminar, we're that water flow that actually is frictionless.
Right. And if I could add in there, great explanation, Dave. And what I would add in there is that I always go back to alignment, right? We are trying to align, not dethrone. So if you want to keep your Microsoft CA, we have a Felix's bag of tricks of things that we can do to work with the Microsoft CA. Like what Dave was saying, again, alignment, because the connector will do the work for you, it'll pull the service once it connects through your login information securely. It'll pull the service to get all those certificates. And if you have multi-profile signings through this Microsoft CA, we're going to grab all of it. And then at that point, you can start taking better, actions of what to do with it. You can renew, you can revoke, right? And what we do is, again, what we're doing is we're sending triggers to that service to say, go ahead and revoke this. And the reason we can do that as DigiCert is because you took your login information, filled in the vessel, and told it how to commence to that windy river and how to get there. And then those services, again, aligning with the service, unifying the management. We're not trying to dethrone anybody. But as most of you are probably seeing, because DigiCert isn't the only one providing services for you as our customer or as a PKI partner. There could be other services, there could be middlemen, and all those pieces, unfortunately, carry a cost. And that's why we focus the DigiCert One model as a single stack solution. And if you're connecting to other services, again, we're just aligning. We're not saying you got to put new stuff in, you got to buy new things. It's the unification of management to help you better work with that service. But we don't want you to remove that service. We want to work with you there, as Dave was stating.
And Taylor, let me append, and if the questioner will allow me to append to their question. In the same way, and because in the questions, there was a question about Let's Encrypt. Look, we're not fighting Let's Encrypt. Let's Encrypt, quite frankly, if people understand the market, have 65% of the certificate market. We control the majority of the full validation market. But the reality is that there's a place for everything. And we're not fighting the place for everything. We're enabling you to actually have visibility and management of any type of certificates, whether that be our public routes, whether it be our private or your independent ICAs that we potentially could manage for you, whether that be Let's Encrypt, whether that be your AWS certificates.
Awesome. Great, you guys. Okay, the next question we have is, what does it take to get these devices hooked into the systems, permissions, configurations, firewalls, rules, etc.?
And that was the one I was answering. I'll take that. When you look at from a footprint perspective of how the SaaS model of what I'm showing you today, or what I showed today, is literally there's only 2 ports that we need to communicate over, and that's back to your TLM account. And I say we collectively is just DigiCert as your PKI partner or provider, but only port 80 and 443. So again, there really isn't an alignment unless you start getting into air gapping. Then that gets a little interesting, because then we're talking about proxy configurations, things like that, potentially DMZs, what have you, all the other kind of fun network buzzwords. But we have methods to work with those. Again, so we always, and I don't mean this facetiously, but we kind of put it back on the customer to say, you got to decide where you want us. If you want us in these secure zones that are typically air gapped, then you're either whitelisting or you're at that point, maybe, I guess, for the lack of better terms, I don't want to use this incorrectly, punching holes in the policy to let us in there. But let us in, meaning that you're allowing that agent or that sensor to take action, whether it be a network discovery, whether it be automation, or again, any of those services that reside in there. Remember, the connector's running out of TLM. It's not running in your network. It's actually telling the sensor what to do, how to do it. It's the data set, and the sensor goes and does the heavy lifting. It's the workhorse. Then it brings back that data so you can manage it. So there isn't a lot of teeter-tottering inside that area of the network. But depending, what you can tell connectors and sensors is this way is how often do you want them to pull? And that is going to decide how you want to establish your policy. Again, whitelisting, putting it directly in that area of the network or what have you. But we really work with those customers to make those decisions. And we offer professional services that can also come in and give you statements of work and kind of tell you what it's going to take for those types of adjustments as well. So we offer many services there. The beauty of all of this, and without dating myself, if you can't tell from my hairline, is I've been doing this since VeriSign, and this is the most amazing time in PKI that I've seen to totally put my propeller hat on. This is the most amazing time I've seen in PKI because we've actually got to the step of single stack solution. And when you see that and you use it, even whether you POC or you buy the solution, whatever it is, you start to see the unification. It really is there. The efficiency is there. I'm absolutely ear to ear smiles when I deal with this stuff. And I'm extremely passionate, if you haven't heard me on the calls about it, because I've seen it working. I've seen it working in every scale of the enterprise, from SMBs all the way through the super enterprise, as most enterprises are hybrid today. But I've seen it working at even those large levels. And it's not really a matter of we can't do it. It's a matter of taking that step to expand and start using those services there. So again, hopefully that answers that. Kind of went long, but it is absolutely an amazing time to see what PKI is doing and when the provider can bring everything together like this for you. Sorry, Taylor, go ahead.
That's great. We've got about 4 minutes left, so we probably have time for 1 or 2 more questions. Okay, this next one is directed at Frank. Frank, yes. Can the F5 automation you showed also link/update the cert to the SSL profile for the VS?
I want to say yes to a certain point. Again, I would go back to the footprint. The sensor is connecting to the F5 to nudge it to do things. So is the F5 going to see the profile sitting in TLM, if I understood that correctly? The quick answer would be no, because what we're telling the F5 is, I know what I have to do. I have the credentials to tell you to do it, and I need you to follow these instructions. So create the key pair, give me the CSR. I'll do the heavy lifting on the back end, and I'll build the nomenclature of your certificate. Then I'll provide it in the deployment. Now, this is not auto magic. There's an administrator, someone much smarter than myself, who's sitting in TLM saying, you know what, I'm working with that F5 team. I know exactly what they want on those certs. So I'm going to grab the product type, put it in the profile, and then, of course, get the deployment accordingly. Now, if you're asking if you can do it via the F5 onto the IIS node, as an example, I think what I saw, the additional follow-up, typically we'd go with an agent onto the IIS box, unless, again, the F5 has some means of pushing it. But typically the way I see it is we separate the two. It's not a choice when you're dealing with sensors and agents. You use sensors to work on your appliances as endpoints. You use agents on those nodes or network operating systems, Windows and Linux, on those endpoints to control those certificate deployment mechanisms. And that is probably the more efficient model, because then you don't have one person bottlenecking that area of the network trying to do all these things for others. Now, you can tell the F5 with it going a little bit longer to start mirroring, if it's got a key pair that's ready to give to its active pairs, you can tell it it's now available. We call those pre and post op scripts that you can put in there, say, okay, F5, I'm done. Go ahead and let your active pairs know that this key pair is available, and then whatever mechanism they use to attain those key pairs from that primary node. So hopefully that answers it. Again, I know we're short on time, so if not, you guys most of you know my email address. You can just contact me directly, and I will also provide additional questions and answers if you need it. So hopefully that helped.
Perfect.
Right, 1 minute. I want to take one of the questions.
Okay, great. Do you have a specific one that you want to take?
Dave's a
Yeah.
machine.
Okay.
So one of the questions was, Frank showed the automations and how much of that is part of the base package. This is a wonderful thing. We are basically offering our platform and its integrations as the base package. So when we actually provide you a quote, there is not an additional cost for the F5 integration. There's not an additional cost for the Microsoft CA connector. And so, and I don't expect that to change, at least in the near term. And I think this is part of our entry into certificate management, and really we want to actually go out. I can't say it enough. We want to be your partner.
Yeah. And if I could take the last one, since Dave did, there was one question about how much of the demo shown was part of the base package. Everything you saw in that demo today is what you get with TLM. The way we've always dealt with it, literally, again, without dating myself, since the VeriSign days, which has always been a great model, is how you consume. It's not the amount of functions. And some of that we won't turn on because you just may not need it. But a lot of times with connectors and everything, we pretty much enable everything for the customer so they can start using it. And then it's all about that consumption. And that's where your account executive or account manager comes in and really helps you fortify those numbers. And again, if there's overages, customers aren't penalized. We look at it, we true up at the time of your renewal to help you get your baseline. And we go from there with very pithy contractual packages. So I'll end it on that note. Thanks, Taylor.
Awesome. You guys, that was amazing. We're at time. So if we didn't get to your question, we will follow up with you in an email after the conclusion of the webinar. Thank you for joining us today. This webinar will be sent out via email later today, and you can view it through your unique link. Before you jump off, we want to know more about you. So if you wouldn't mind filling out the survey on the right-hand side of the screen, that would be much appreciated. Thanks again, and have a great rest of your guys' day. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thanks to David, Frank, and Taylor for putting together a really informative presentation and for all of those insights there in the Q&A. This has been a great session. And before we close, we would like to hear about your biggest challenges with digital certificates. This is that poll that Taylor mentioned. We've got a list of common challenges here, and you can pick out as many as you face. The options include visibility of public and private certificates in my infrastructure, integrations with my current systems, with some examples there, managing user and device certificates, outages, overall certificate management, and then other. But a lot of interesting options there. I'm eager to see where you guys land on these challenges. And we're just going to give everyone just a little time to select their answers. We'll just leave this up for another 10 seconds or so. Appreciate all those answers coming in. And in fact, I'll leave this open while we take care of our last element of the day, which is the Amazon gift card prize drawing. So the winner of the $250 Amazon gift card today is Jessica Alvarez from Washington, D.C. Congratulations to Jessica. We'll be in touch about your card. And with that, I just want to thank everybody who filled out this poll. Really appreciate your feedback there. That's really helpful. And with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to thank DigiCert for making this event possible. And thanks as always for attending and for your great questions. That's going to conclude today's event. Have a fantastic rest of your day.